Monday morning edition of Dolphins Today. We're going to look at the NFL draft and where Miami stands with 2 weeks to go in the season. Plus, we'll also look at some rumors after the loss, how Quinn Ewers handled it, speaking to the media, just quick thoughts on his performance as well. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today. Miami, with the loss, actually moved up one spot. They entered Sunday with the 11th pick in the draft, with them losing and the Atlanta Falcons winning. They moved to 6-9. Well, Miami now moves up to that 10th overall spot. You look at the NFL draft order entering the final 2 weeks of the year, and obviously this will not be influenced by the Monday night game between San Francisco and Indianapolis. There are some room for Miami to bump up in the final 2 weeks of the year if you see the Commanders, Saints, Bengals potentially go out and get some wins. But Miami, as they continue to struggle, are inching closer and closer to a higher draft pick. And we not only cover the NFL draft, we cover Dolphins football. 73 subscribers away from 78.7K. Hit that sub button, join the family, as we're trying to get to 79,000 right now. Well, as you see, Miami now holds that 10th spot. They can get to as high as 7 if everything plays out the way they need it to be. And for the draft, that would be Washington winning out and Miami losing out. That is incredibly unlikely. They will likely be drafting anywhere between 8 and 10. I mean, you look at those 4 teams that are 7 through 10 right now, and Miami's schedule is probably the hardest of them all. Like, they play the best team out of everyone in New England, but they also have to play a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team fighting for survival. Yeah, it's at home, but it's not going to be an easy task for the Dolphins to hold off a Buccaneers team desperately looking for a win, as they're 1-6 in their last 7 games. But you look at Cincinnati's schedule, you look at New Orleans' schedule. Both of them play teams that are not good. I mean, the Bengals are playing 2 teams picking inside the top 5. You would have to imagine they win one of those games, with both of them being in Cincinnati. And the Saints play the Titans and the Falcons. I would be willing to bet, even though they're both on the road, that the Saints would win one of those 2 games. And all you need is Cincinnati and New Orleans to win one game and you to lose both of yours against Tampa and New England to climb up to that 8th overall pick. Like, I think it's very unlikely that Washington wins out, so you don't think you can worry about the 7th overall pick. But I do have a hard time believing that Miami won't be picking 8th in April for the NFL draft. Like, do we really think the way this team looked against Cincinnati at home are going to be able to rebound and beat a Buccaneers team fighting for playoff lives? If they lose and the Panthers win, they could be eliminated from playoff contention. Do we think they're going to hold off Baker Mayfield and the Bucs with that high-octane offense that they have with those wide receivers? No, probably not. And then New England in Week 18, they're going to be playing for something, whether it is to be the number 2 seed, whether it is to be the number 1 overall seed, whether it is to clinch the AFC East. Even with them beating Baltimore on Sunday night, New England will be playing for something at home. So I do believe Miami finished the year 6-11. And I do think Cincinnati or New Orleans win a game. I think both of them do, actually. And Miami will be picking 8th in the NFL draft. And I got to be honest, that's what I'm rooting for at this point. I am going to root for the Dolphins to lose in the final 2 weeks. This is what I'm looking for in the final games of the year. I'm looking for Quinn Ewers to show positive signs, whether you want to go into the offseason with him as your bridge starter in 2026 because you don't draft a quarterback high, or whether you want to ultimately just have him as your backup and feel comfortable about that going forward. But I want him to show positive signs against good opponents, Miami to lose those 2 games to get the 8th overall pick, and hopefully in those 2 losses, it shows Stephen Ross, Mike McDaniel needs to be fired, because I think the evidence is stacking about him needing to go. Not going to get into it in depth on today's show because we do that so much, but that is how I hope this season ultimately ends. 2 losses, Quinn Ewers shows signs, and McDaniel gets fired. But after laying out the land, what pick do you think Miami ultimately gets? If they lose, they won't be able to fall any lower than 10 based off the strength of schedule, which is the tiebreaker. But if they win, or if they win out, well, maybe that changes things. And it seems like Miami, by the way, is already focused on draft season in some ways, which could signify the safety and security that Mike McDaniel has with this Dolphins job. Because we talked about it at the end of this past week leading up to the game on Sunday about comp pick formula and how Ifeatu Melifonwu and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine affected that based on their play time percentage. Well, Melifonwu did play with Micah Fitzpatrick out with a calf injury, but Miami did make Nick Westbrook-Ikhine inactive. And if you were to choose one of the two players to make inactive, NWI certainly was the one to do that. And why should you ask? Well, the Dolphins, if you did not know this and you didn't watch our videos at the end of last week, would receive a 2026 fourth-round comp pick if NWI ends up being below the free agency threshold in terms of snaps played. Miami is currently projected to get a fourth-round pick because of the loss of Javon Holland due to the contract he received in free agency and the play time he has with that Giants defense, but that could get nullified if the formula ends up being calculated and Miami ultimately gains as much as they lost in free agency this past year. And I'll tell you one thing, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine certainly has not been an addition for this Dolphins football team. I mean, I said it, a hand up, that's on me. I thought he was going to be a difference maker for this team because he was something Miami didn't have in the past, which was a big body ex-receiver, 6'2", 211. Their only wide receivers last year were Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Malik Washington, like smaller guys. So his ability to make contested catches down the field and be an explosive vertical route guy, as well as being a blocker, was something I thought was going to be really impactful for this Dolphins team. But it has been nothing short of that. He's been horrible. And he hasn't been that good as a blocker either, and that is what he's being known for. So he's been an incredible disappointment. I would make him inactive for the final two games and just continue to elevate Theo Weiss. Remember, you get 3 P-Squad elevations. First one was this past week. I expect Weiss to get his final 2 of the year the next 2 weeks as well, and Nick Westbrook-Ikhine be inactive, which should hopefully guarantee Miami getting a fourth-round comp pick in April's 2026 draft. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the holiday season, folks. You know what that means. Picksmas is back. It started on December 20th, so make sure you download the app and unwrap those deals. But they're giving you 7 days of deal all the way through Christmas Day, including a Christmas Day max discount. So don't miss out. Make sure you just download the app, and when you want to play, pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, and you can cash out. Your fantasy season might already be over. My 3 teams got cooked this weekend, and I was very, very angry. But, you know, it's not making me angry. The fact that I can still play fantasy football every week on PrizePicks when I pick some players and they can hit their projections, no draft required. And I got more than Christian McCaffrey touchdowns tonight, more than George Kittle. And PrizePicks, they're a bunch of silly gooses over there, but they got more than on Phillip Rivers passing yards. Join me, download the PrizePicks app today, and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Let's talk about what Quinn Ewers had to say after his first start. Obviously spoke to Dolphins reporters as quarterbacks and head coaches do after every single game. And before we even showcase what he said and how he felt like he played, how about this interesting stat? And I just want you to know I am not trying to push a propaganda piece right now. I am just telling you this is a very fascinating stat that I wanted everyone to know. The only rookie quarterback to have more passing yards in his first start for the Miami Dolphins than Quinn Ewers' 260 yards yesterday was Dan Marino. I mean, that's certainly an interesting stat, obviously. I don't think this is anything of a foreshadowing, but I just did want to share that stat for all of y'all. But to me, Quinn Ewers looked like a backup yesterday for the Miami Dolphins. And I think based off one start, I could feel pretty confident saying he probably will have a 8 to 10 year career in the NFL. He has a lot of arm talent. That is very clear. It's on display. Some of those just wrist flicks kind of throws he had in the pocket yesterday, flat-footed, not even getting a lot of his body into it. It was impressive, but he also made some poor decisions. He kind of sat in the pocket a little bit too long on some plays. To me, when you think of a backup, you think of a guy who can make some plays but won't do it consistently, can keep you in ball games. And I think if Miami doesn't turn the ball over 3 times in the third quarter, they probably are in that game. Obviously, the Greg Dulcich fumbles a dagger right after the phantom OPI call, and then the 2 interceptions, which I think the first one wasn't on Quinn Ewers. I mean, it was a good throw, just good play by the defender, meeting at the catch point, got popped up in the air and picked off. And then the second one, that was bad. Shouldn't have thrown that floating ball down the sideline. And if you are going to do it, throw it on the boundary so it's either your wide receiver catches it or nothing. He talked about it. Hard to win games with turnovers. I mean, you got outscored in the third quarter, 21-0. I don't think it's a coincidence, folks, that you got outbeat in the turnover margin 3-0 in that quarter as well. I mean, all 21 points Cincinnati scored in the third quarter were off Miami Dolphins turnovers. You don't turn the ball over, you don't have that phantom OPI call, maybe things change because instead of you giving up a touchdown and being down 24-14, you might have been able to tie it up or take the lead on that drive as you were projected to have it inside the Bengals 35 after that 32-yard catch and run by Devon Achane. So I'm not blaming the officials, but Ewers is certainly correct in his assessment that you don't turn the ball over in that third quarter, and it's probably not a blowout. It is probably a closer game. And Ewers, again, speaking on his game, said it's one of those where you feel like you did a good job, but it doesn't translate to the scoreboard. I think he's just echoing home that sentiment about the turnovers because I do think Ewers was fine. I mean, if you would have told me he had a 66.7 completion percentage, I would have probably been happy about that because the one thing you could always say about Ewers and Texas is that he was wildly inaccurate at times. But I thought he only had about 3 or 4 throws that he just missed, and we will have a full Quinn Ewers breakdown and looking at some of his film and my grading for Ewers later today on our live show, so make sure you subscribe for that and keep an eye on that video. But I do think Ewers in this Dolphins offense was probably better than the scoreboard would tell you, but it's still frustrating to see this second half fall apart, disappearing act that we've seen all year long by Miami. Obviously, the defense got a rough go of it because they had to give up such good field position to Cincinnati every drive in the second half, but boy, they really gave out as well. We talked about this a little bit on Monday or a Sunday night's video, but Ewers did say he felt like he had a great grasp of the game plan and didn't feel like it was too ahead of us, if in terms of the speed of the game, because sometimes with rookies you see how frantic they get and they get nervous that they don't have enough time in the pocket. They get happy feet. They make bad reads. They make quick reads. They make inaccurate throws. I think it was the opposite. I think at times Quinn Ewers actually was a little bit too lackadaisical in the pocket. So it's certainly a good problem to have right now. You'd like to speed someone up rather than the game being too fast for someone. So I do think we are at a pretty good baseline for Quinn Ewers. Despite it going up against the worst defense in the NFL, thought it was a relatively fine performance. And I'm fascinated by this upcoming game. I know I already said I'm going to root for Miami to lose, and I know it's crazy for me to say that, and I usually am against that. But since it's so likely that if you lose out, you get the 8th overall pick, I want them to lose. But I'm fascinated to see how Quinn Ewers and how this Dolphins roster responds on Sunday at home against Tampa. Because as I mentioned, the Buccaneers are fighting for their playoff lives. If they lose to Miami and the Panthers win, they are done. They need to win to set up a Week 18 matchup between Carolina and Tampa for the division. And Todd Bowles, a veteran defensive coordinator, is going to ultimately throw the kitchen sink at a rookie. So I can't wait to see how McDaniel scripts up a game plan, how Ewers responds after 2 turnovers in that third quarter. And with a full week of practice, I hope the operation is better with Quinn Ewers and this Dolphins offense. I can't wait to see it. And we'll be here for it all. So hit that sub button, subscribe today, and make sure you join us for daily Dolphins coverage because we're not going anywhere.